Isn't this a wonderful story? People had come in droves to see Jesus, and Jesus had gotten in Peter's boat to escape the crush. Then he taught the crowd from this little boat just offshore. And when Jesus had finished teaching the crowd, he told his disciples, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Peter, he must have been tempted to say, "Hey, Master, we've been here all night, and we haven't caught a darn thing. We're tired, and all we want to do is go home. I'd love to take a shower, and I'd kill for a cup of coffee." But Peter, he checked his quick tongue. He thought for a moment, and then he thought better, and he said, "But because you say so, I will let down the nets." So the disciples, they let down their nets, and suddenly they were swamped with fish. Fish were everywhere. The load threatened to break the nets, and they had to call in a second boat, didn't they? And that load threatened to sink both boats. The disciples were amazed. And Peter, he responded immediately. Peter was an action guy. He was. He always did the first thing that crossed his mind. And this time, the first thing that crossed his mind was that he was in the presence of God. And the second thing that crossed his mind was that he was not worthy to be in the presence of God. He told Jesus, he said, "Away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." In the presence of Christ's holiness, Peter was overwhelmed with his own unholiness. For the first time, Peter saw the stark contrast between what God created him to be and what he had become. The prophet Isaiah was like that. Isaiah found himself in God's presence, and he cried out, "Woe to me! I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips." When Peter and Isaiah found themselves in the presence of God, they were both overwhelmed. I wonder what would happen if we were to come into the presence of God. I wonder what would happen if Jesus were to work a miracle right here this morning in our presence. I wonder if we would be amazed. I wonder if we would just think Jesus was playing a clever little trick. If we were just overwhelmed by his holiness, maybe. If we would be overcome with the wonder of it. Or if we would see the contrast between Jesus' holiness and our unholiness. Today, we see so much unholiness, don't we? The news is just full of it. We see it at work. We see it at play. Truthfully, nothing really shocks us anymore, does it? Compared to the evil that we see around us, we look at ourselves in the mirror and we say, our sins aren't that bad. So how can Jesus get our attention? What would Jesus have to do to get the attention of the people here at Pikeside this morning? What would happen if Jesus just came into Pikeside this morning? What would happen if he brought the power of his holiness into our midst? I doubt that we would crucify him, and we'd probably just tolerate him, to be truthful. We'd probably say, he's entitled to his own opinion. And then we'd probably just ignore him like we do so many. But Peter didn't ignore Jesus that day. Peter obeyed Jesus. And Jesus asked something of Peter that was at the same time small, but it was also great. Jesus asked Peter, a professional fisherman, to go out into deep water and to let down his nets. That was a small thing, wasn't it? Peter had done that 1,000 times. In fact, Peter had done it that very night. To ask a fisherman to let down his nets is simply to ask him to do what he does. Nothing big there. No fisherman can survive unless he lets down his nets, right? So Jesus asked something very small of Peter that day. But at the same time, Jesus asked Peter to do something great. Peter and his friends had been fishing all night and hadn't caught anything. Someone might ask, "Hey, Peter, are you catching anything?" What do you think his answer would be? Nope. It's okay. We can enjoy work and we see results, can't we? But Peter and his friends, they weren't seeing any results that night. They weren't having a $100 night. They weren't having a $5 night. They were having a no dollar night. So Peter was tired, and he was discouraged, and he was worried, and he was ready to go home. But Jesus said, he said, put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. Peter had just come back in from the deep water, and he had been putting down nets all night. So the small thing that Jesus was asking was actually quite a large thing. You see, Jesus was asking Peter to believe that his presence, Jesus' presence, would make a difference. He was asking Peter to do a little thing that would demonstrate great faith. He was saying, Peter, this won't make any sense to you, to do it anyway. Notice Peter's response. First, he grumped a little bit, didn't he? He said, we've worked all night and haven't caught anything. But the rest of that response is, but because you say so, I will let down the nets. Now that's the NIV translation, because. I like the World English Bible translation for this passage, because it has Peter saying the word if. But if you say so, I will let down the nets. You know, I feel that that word if gives a statement more depth. You can see kids say it, if, you know. Just envision how Peter was talking to Jesus. If you say so. There seems to be a little reluctance in that word if. You know, that's why I can see Mary saying it. If you say so. You know, that was Noah's response when God asked him to build the world's biggest boat in his backyard. If you say so, I'll do it. And you know, that was Moses' response too, wasn't it? When God called him to lead his people out of slavery. And that was Isaiah's response when God called him to speak for God. I think if you say so has been the response of every person that God has ever been able to use since the beginning of history. Some of them grumped at first, but then they said, if you say so. Moses said, I can't speak well. But then he said, if you say so, I'll do it. Isaiah said, I'm a man of unclean lips. But then he said, if you say so. Peter said, we've already tried that, Jesus. But then he said, if you say so. God has always been able to use people who say, if you say so. He's never been able to use people who say, maybe. God's always been able to use people who say, if you say so. He's never been able to use people who say, someday I'll get to it. He's always been able to use people who say, if you say so. He's never been able to use people who say, hey, it's my way or the highway. He's always been able to use people who say, if you say so, Lord. He can't use people who say no. You know, 16 centuries ago, Augustine put it this way. He said, Jesus Christ will be Lord of all, or he will not be Lord at all. And then 8 centuries ago, Meister Eckhart put it this way. He said, God asks only one thing of you, that you dethrone the creaturely self and let him be God in you. And 6 centuries ago, Martin Luther, he put it this way. He said, God creates out of nothing. Therefore, until a person is nothing, God can make nothing out of him. However we say it, the truth is that God will neither bless us nor use us if we insist on doing things our own way. God will not even try to use us if our hearts are hard and resistant. God can use us only when we come to him as soft clay, ready to be reshaped and remolded in his image and to obey his will. God isn't just trying to jerk us around. He doesn't want us to be puppets. But he created us. He knows who we are. God wrote our operator's manual, didn't he? He just wants us to live the life for which we have been designed because he sees life more clearly than we do. You know, before moving to New York, Reggie Jackson. You don't remember Reggie Jackson? He played for the Baltimore Orioles. I can remember my grandfather watching every Orioles game. And his favorite coach, who do you think it was? Earl Weaver. Oh my God, he loved Earl Weaver. Earl Weaver was a scrappy old thing, wasn't he? Getting up in the umpires' faces and getting ejected and throwing his hat and all that good kind of stuff. It was like a circus watching that with my grandpa. But anyway, Earl Weaver, he had a rule that no one could steal a base unless they got the sign from Earl Weaver. Well, this kind of upset Reggie Jackson because he felt he could judge when he was ready to steal a base. So one day Jackson he got to jump off a pitcher and stole second base. He shook the dirt off his uniform and he smiled because he proved that he knew what he was doing. Later, Weaver took Jackson aside. He explained why he had not given him the steal sign. First, he said the next batter was Lee May, a great power hitter. And when Jackson stole second, that left first base open. So the other team, they walked May intentionally, eliminating his chance of getting a big run. And second, the next batter wasn't as good, so Weaver had to use a pinch hitter to drive in the men on base. And that left Weaver without bench strength later in the game when he needed it. So the problem was that Jackson only saw his little piece of the game. But Earl Weaver, he saw the whole game and how it all worked together. And you know, we too are like that. We only see a little piece of the game, don't we? But God, he sees the whole game. And I think we've learned that over the past few months in our Bible study, the story, because we have the upper story and we have the lower story. Well, God sees the upper story. He sees everything going on. And when he sends us a signal here in the lower story, we need to obey that signal, no matter how smart we think we are. Peter knew that. So he said, if you say so. And as a result, God was able to use him. Once Peter said, if you say so, he began to work by God's power. Once Peter said, if you say so, God turned him into a powerhouse. What about you? What does God want from your life? What little thing or what big thing is he calling you to do? How is he calling you to demonstrate your faith? Is he asking you to pay more attention to your family? Is he asking you to obey your parents? Is he asking you to deal honestly with your employer? Is he asking you to deal compassionately with your employees, or your coworkers? Is he asking you to get honest on your tax forms? Is he asking you to get help with alcohol or drugs? Is he asking you to get serious about the money that you put in the offering plate? Is he asking you to take down that wall that you have built around yourself? Whatever it is, whatever God is asking of you, it is his way of preparing you for a blessing. Whatever God asks of you, just answer if you say so. And see, my friends, and see what God can do. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.